They said 15 engineers had tried, each one leaving with shame in his eyes and dust on his boots. Machines rattled, wires tangled, and diagrams scattered across my kitchen table like dead leaves in the wind. But in the end, not one of them could make the contraption work. And then me, a woman whose only title was Nanny, looked once, turned a dial, tied a knot, and in 30 heartbeats, the impossible sprang to life. I was only supposed to be there for his boy. Just a hired pair of hands to rock a cradle, scrub mud from trousers, and keep the sound of laughter inside a house that had forgotten it. But that day, with my fingers smudged in grease instead of flour, I found myself standing at the heart of something greater: a man's pride, his empire, and maybe, his heart. I came to his ranch on a day when the Wyoming sky looked like it had been split open, half storm, half promise. He was a widower, younger than most expected of a man with so much weight on his shoulders, but still with that weathered look carved by long nights and lonelier dawns. They called him the CEO of Steel and Cattle, a man whose hands could sign $1 million deals in town by morning and rope a runaway steer by sundown. But behind those sharp gray eyes lived a quiet grief, the kind that seeps into a house until the curtains droop and the piano stays closed. His son, barely 6, had a restlessness that no toy nor tutor could tame. That boy needed warmth. That's why I was there. Only I hadn't expected him, the father, to need saving just as much. It started with the machine. His company had sunk thousands of dollars into an invention meant to haul water from the deepest part of the Ranch Creek, a machine that would turn parched fields into green hope. But every attempt ended in failure: gears grinding, belts snapping, men swearing. The engineers had left with excuses, each one shaking their heads as if the land itself were cursed. I'd seen the machine from the corner of the yard, rust flashing in the sun, a monster of iron too stubborn to yield. And I'd seen him, that proud single father, bent over it at dusk, sweat streaking through dust, his son watching silently from the porch steps. That sight stayed with me. One evening, when the boy had fallen asleep on my lap, I wandered out to where the machine sulked in the half-light. He was there too, kneeling beside it, his shirt rolled to the elbows, jaw tight with defeat. He didn't notice me at first, so I just watched him, struck by how a man so strong could look so weary. Finally, I spoke, "Mind if I take a look?" He almost laughed. Almost. 15 engineers couldn't fix it, he said. What makes you think you can? I should be backed away. But something in me stirred, the same something that had learned to mend wagons as a girl, that had spent long nights with a lamp and a toolbox when my daddy's plow refused to move. I wasn't an engineer. I was just someone who paid attention, so I crouched down, brushed my palm across the lever, and listened to the groan of its bones. The belts were crossed wrong, tight where they should be been slack, slack where tension was life. I smiled to myself, tugged one, loosened another, tied it back like I'd braid a child's hair. Then I turned the crank. The machine came alive. Water gushed up from the earth like salvation itself. He stared, wide-eyed, as though I'd performed witchcraft. What in God's name? His voice cracked, not in anger but in awe. 30 seconds. I shrugged, though my heart pounded. Sometimes things aren't as complicated as men like to make them. For a long moment, he just stood there, his hand gripping the rail, eyes flicking from the roaring machine to me. And in that silence, with the stars beginning to wake in the Wyoming sky, something shifted between us. From that night forward, he looked at me differently. When I braided his son's hair into a little tail for play, his gaze lingered. When I kneaded bread at the wooden counter, flour dusting my arms, I felt the heat of his eyes across the room. And when the boy begged us both to join him fishing at the creek, he didn't hesitate. He came, sat beside me, and asked questions about me for the first time. "Where do you learn machines like that?" I told him about my father's farm, about hardship teaching faster than books. He listened, really listened, in a way no man ever had. The prairie wind tugged at his hair, and for a second, I thought he might reach for my hand. But he didn't. Not then. Still, the land began to change, and so did we. The water his fields needed now ran steady, green shoots stretching from the dirt. His boy laughed louder, his small hand always tugging at mine. And the house, oh, that lonely house, began to breathe again. Curtains were tied back, windows thrown open, and once, I even heard him playing the piano in the late hours, soft notes drifting through the halls. But it wasn't all peace. Word spread fast in small towns, and soon whispers curled around us. That the widowed CEO was letting his heart wander where it shouldn't. That I was just a nanny reaching too high. At church, I felt eyes prick my back. In town, women clutched their children closer as if my presence was shameful. I nearly left. I packed my bag one night, tears hot on my cheeks, thinking it would be easier to vanish than to bear their scorn. But when I went to kiss the boy goodbye, his arms locked around my neck. "Don't go," he whispered. "You fixed more than the machine. You fixed my daddy too." My heart broke clean open. The next morning, I found his father waiting by the barn, his face set like he'd been rehearsing words all night. "I heard you were leaving," he said quietly. I nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "It's not right, me being here. Folks are talking." He stepped closer, close enough that the warmth of his body stilled my shaking. "Let them talk, I don't care what they say." His voice dropped, raw and certain. "You walked into my life to care for my son, but you saved me just the same. Do you think I could let you walk away now?" Tears blurred my vision as his hand brushed my cheek. And there, beneath the wide Wyoming sky, he kissed me, the kind of kiss that tasted of dust and rain and long buried hope. From then on, I was no longer just the nanny. I was the woman who stood beside him in the boardroom and the barn, who braided his boy's hair and mended his heart. We faced the whispers together, strong as steel. And though the prairie still bore its hardships, I knew I'd found my place not by blood or by name, but by love that had grown in the shadow of a broken machine. Sometimes, all it takes is 30 seconds to change a man's fortune. But love changes everything.